dream about to come true for Chip Hanauer as he accelerates for the last time across the line, and Chip Hanauer has won the Gold Cup. And look how happy he is as he waves his arm to the crowd and continues really at full speed, looking over, acknowledging the cheers of those gathered here on the Detroit River. Well, already there is a bit of a party beginning down in the pits as Chip Hanauer climbs off the boat and gives a hug and a kiss to Fran Muncey, the first woman owner of a boat to win the Gold Cup. The crowd has their salute, and the Gold Cup belongs to Chip Hanauer.
Yeah, at the time that happened, we really didn't know each other very well.
No.
I mean, I think when we won the Gold Cup is really the first time we actually were close at all. And I think that moment when I got out of the boat and went to you, I mean, that was when I think we first really felt comfortable with each other.
Right. Plus, we'd been working on this, to a conclusion, which was the win. And so I think we were getting to know each other. But, I mean, that was just so unbelievable.
And I think we were both happy for Bill. I mean, the moment was definitely Bill's moment, I think, and everybody that was involved, the crew and Fran and the Atlas people, knew it was this kind of magical Bill moment. Mm-hmm. I think that's what brought everybody together.
Mm-hmm. So it's still the most exciting moment of my life was winning that Gold Cup. Because I guess, it had been such a struggle getting the boat built, get just so many things.
I think you're supposed to say it's the birth of your first child.
No, but it wasn't, because they always gave me gas and I woke up after. So I never experienced that. But that was the most exhilarating feeling most exciting moment of my life. But then I was worried because Chip had always said, now if I win a Gold Cup, that's my goal, to win a Gold Cup, and then I'm going to retire. So I thought, oh my gosh, now we have to find a driver.
That was the plan, too. Didn't work out. Yeah, my intention was always to win a Gold Cup and national championship and then be done. But I think after '82, I think everybody who was involved in that program felt connected. And there was no way I was going to leave that group after that. I mean, I think we had all gone through this amazing time together. And I think at that point, I had decided I would stay as long as this group was together. That was pretty much the case, too, because then when Bill Bennett bought the team, I tried to quit at that point, too, because our group, that was pretty much the breakup of the Muncey group. But he talked me into staying. Fran was the best owner, any driver, whether it's me or anybody, is the best owner that you could ever have. What's funny is there's a lot of guys in the sport, owners in the sport, who are tough guys. Dave Ahrensberger, Bernie Little, Steve Woomer. Always trying to be intimidating, always trying to be tough. And Fran just came in very quietly, very shyly, and kicked their ass for, I don't know how many years it was. And, here are these guys trying to be threatening, and Fran just slowly, year after year, just kicked their butts. And that was really satisfying for me because there were some pretty obnoxious boat owners, and it was just great to see Fran slide in there and just slap them around for however many years you did.
But that's because you were driving, so that's why.
It was everybody. But Fran, more than any other owner,
used to call me the glue.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't sure what you think, though.
Oh, no.
No. Fran cared more than the other owners. I mean, the other owners, I think, spent the money, but they didn't care. Fran cared. I mean, she would do absolutely anything that she thought would help. If that meant driving a truck or staying. I remember one night, the guys had been up for like 3 nights in a row. Fran just does not give up. No matter what it is, Fran does not give up. And I would hate to compete against Fran because no matter how many times you beat her, she's going to come back. She's like a pit bull. And
Excellent.
and I remember the guys had been up working on engines for 3 nights in a row. And finally, at like 2 in the morning, they put the tools down and said, "We got to go home. We're tired." And Fran said, "Show me what has to be done. I'll do it." And they're like, "Nah, Fran, come on." She goes, "No, just show me what I need to do, and I'll do it." And whatever it took, Fran would do it. And sometimes it was frustrating because Fran also believes anybody, no matter if she knows them or not. So she would come home from a restaurant and say, "I met this guy, and he says we should turn the engine sideways," or whatever it was. And she wanted everybody to at least look into it to see if there was some kind of advantage. She was always looking for an advantage, and also very supportive. You wanted to win for Fran, where some of the owners, you drove for them and you won, but Fran, everybody wanted to deliver for Fran because she just supported everybody so much. From my point of view, I think it definitely started off as Bill's project. And I think it was billed to me that we didn't intend on winning. I mean, we had a Merlin engine. Bill had tried for how many years to beat the Griffin with a Merlin, and everybody pretty much accepted you could not beat a Griffin with a Merlin. So I signed up for the program basically figuring we were kind of just there as a tribute to Bill. I don't think we intended to win like we did. But I think it became Fran's team, if not after that Gold Cup, certainly after that year. Not that Bill still wasn't a part of the team. I mean, he was, and still is when you're around the Muncey family. You know, Bill is still there. His stepdaughter, I mean, does nothing but speak of Bill as that he's her real father. But I think after the first year, it became an entity of itself. It was no longer Bill's team, but I think Fran's team.
Well, I know that I was very sensitive that first year after the Gold Cup, because then we got so much attention of people saying, well, is Chip filling Bill's shoes? And I always liked what you said. Well, I'm not. What did you say? I really liked it. I can't remember it, though.
Do you feel that you have to fill his shoes?
I feel like I've got a big job to do and a lot of responsibility, and for nice people like this, you just want to deliver. I can't be the next Bill Muncey. I can only be the first Chip Hanauer and hopefully be as effective, but in my own way.
But that was pretty much. I pretty much
Here to stay?
I pretty much rehearsed that or
Yeah.
thought about that because
Yeah.
I knew what was coming. You know, in fact, a lot of friends and family told me, "Don't take the job. It's a no-win situation." So I just, right from the beginning, I mean, I felt like I was driving for Bill, but I didn't want to be compared to Bill. Or
You know what you said? You said, I'm not trying to I could never fill Bill Muncey's shoes. I'm trying to be the first Chip Hanauer.
I probably said something different wherever it was, but I mean,
Something like that.
the issue was I wanted to separate myself from Bill, that I was there on behalf of Bill, but I certainly wasn't Bill's replacement or, Bill's, stand-in.
But there was a lot of magic involved, and it had to do with, the renewal. Atlas Van Lines people were like a family. They were so supportive, so wonderful. Chip appreciated them. And then he started speaking all over the United States for Atlas Van Lines, and he had not ever done that before.
Right. It was, as Fran says, it really was magic. There was this group of people, and I've never been on a race team since that was like that. It was beyond a race team. I mean, it was family, and I think Bill was the nucleus of that. I mean, Bill's secretary, Ruth Langford, just loved Bill to death, and Bill loved her very much. But yet, all of these people who loved Bill just embraced me, So instead of being this horribly intimidating situation, which I thought it was going to be, Bill's secretary's got to deal with this new kid, and, but it was just the opposite of that. And it was just like there's wonderful family, that you were welcomed into. It was like being probably what an adopted child, must feel like, who, this intact family, and instead of making you feel like you're kind of different, you're just kind of brought in and embraced, and that's the way it was. And still is. I think that what's amazing about that group is the affection that was in that group still exists today. More than, again, any other team I've been with. I mean, Ruth Langford stays in touch, and O.H. Frisbee I stay in touch with, and it was just a great, unique situation.
I always considered Chip to be a son, but I told him he's getting too old, so now it needs to be sister.
I remember the day she told me that. I said, I always looked at Fran, like my mother died when I was very young, and and Fran treated me like a son, And then I remember after an interview one time, she says, can we change that mother and daughter thing to a brother and sister, older brother and sister? I said, no problem.
What is the age difference for you?
Fran that's an interesting, Fran, you could hold Fran.
My feet to the fire.
But you've changed. I mean,
Yeah, I have.
you could hold Fran's feet to the fire, and she would not. I don't care what you did. And we always tried to get her driver's license, and it got to be a game to find out how old Fran, and she would not tell you. And then all of a sudden one day she just started telling everybody her age.
No, I
Didn't
don't care. But I think it's, I was born in 42.
I was born in 54.
Okay, so 12 years,
Right.
that's all. So that has
So
to
it
be
could be brother and sister.
Yeah.
Right?
After the first year, then Jim Lucero got more involved the second year, and we could have either gone to, we had to do something. We needed more power, so it was either going to the Griffins or to turbines. And he really recommended, even though we had so many Griffins, we had all the Atlas and Bill Bennett's that I'd purchased from him. That's right. Bill Bennett got out of the sport after Bill was killed. He said he didn't want anything more to do with it, that Bill meant too much to him, so he sold me those engines. So Jim Lucero talked, and Chip and I talked and decided on turbine just because he recommended it. He'd already had all that experience with it, with Herensberger team, and he said it was a lot cleaner, a lot more power. So he convinced us, and we thought that we needed Jim Lucero to be successful, so we decided to do that.
I wanted a sword as big as the other guys. I mean, I always felt like I was going into battle with a knife this big, and they had this big sword, and I felt like I had to overdrive the boat to win, and we had to make up for the power. We basically just had to make the boat loose. So there was no drag, and so I was looking whether it was a Griffin or a turbine. I looked to Jim to make that decision, but I knew we had to do something.
And that was scary, especially 1983, the way he was having to drive the boat. And there was, I remember in San Diego, wasn't there an explosion one day? Well, I remember that. Well, Gary Steele, the Canadian, got blown off the boat.
Right.
But I don't know if it was, I think it was that day, but I'm not sure. But you just knew that Chip was he was just so determined. Oh, to back up a little, Chip is a driver that I always knew that I should not talk to him on race day unless he spoke to me first. So I just didn't, because he did climb inside of himself, and he was there, and he just couldn't. I didn't feel comfortable bothering him. If something was important, then he would say it. So, and I'm only bringing that up because I had said how Bill was totally opposite. Mm-hmm. But that day, no one was going to beat Chip Hanauer, and they had so much more power. You'd gone out I think it was the final heat, all the seat, everything blew out of the boat. You didn't have anything holding in him. There was nothing holding him in the cockpit. He was just holding on the steering wheel and just going all over. I don't know if that was the same day that there was the explosion, but just like nothing was going to stop you. Just the start you made.
It's funny. I think both of us. I don't remember much of my career, or even a race. For example, even today, racing go-karts, if I'm concentrated, the minute it's over, I can't recall a single thing. And if I watch a videotape, it's like watching somebody else. And So I think both of us felt that the minute a race was over, we just wadded it up and threw it away, and immediately we're concentrating on winning the next one. So I think we both struggled. People ask us about the years we were together and the races we won, and I don't think either one of us really are that good at historians of what
I
happened.
just remember bits and pieces,
Right.
but mostly the funny things that happened along the way,
Right.
different
Yeah, those are easy to remember.
parties or experiences.
I think telling stories on Fran, the best night or one of the most enjoyable nights of my life was, and absolutely the best party that I've ever been to was in San Diego. I don't remember if we had won or not or what. It's not important, but the crew was tired, and that was the end of the year, I think. And San Diego was always the last race. And Fran said, "Find all the crew, get them together. I'm bringing the bus down. We're going to put them in the bus, and we're going to drive into Mexico." So everybody jumped in the bus. Fran's driving the bus, I think. Into Mexico we go, and we get down there past Rosarita, quite a ways down.
Well, we stopped there to buy some tequila.
And we went into this little mom and pop. They had a little like Sears stereo,
Puerto Nuevo.
little Sears stereo with these little white speakers, and they had like 3 albums, and we had probably 25 or 30 people, and it was all the lobster and beer you could eat for like $6. We had Rick Johnson with us, who was a world champion motocrosser at the time, and it was absolutely the best party
And then
I've ever
friends
been
of
to.
different crew members, just whoever wanted to come, we
it was-
put them in the bus.
It was nuts.
It was so much fun. I mean,
Out of
it just
control.
can't, out of control, really. But I mean, like dancing, 2 people would hold someone's arm and their feet would go up and dance on the ceiling. Just crazy, stupid things. And I guess maybe it's because of being under so much pressure for so long, and then just being in a place, you just feel you just can just do whatever you want to.
That was the other thing I think with that team is I think it was so intense that we did have more fun when we won. I mean, there are teams I've been with, you went and had dinner. With those teams, I mean, we had a party. And because I think we felt like we were accomplishing so much and we were under so much pressure. And when we beat the Griffin Bud, I mean, we all, I think in our own way, the guys working on the boat and Fran and myself, we all felt like we had really slayed a giant. And so the parties after wins were legendary. They were good parties.
And I think Chip was the Gator champion in Tri-Cities.
A lot of falling on the floor and flying around.
You want to elaborate on that? Either?
Tell them what the Gator is.
Oh, actually, the whole team would get all of a sudden drop on the dance floor and just start flailing around on their backs, and people, all of a sudden there's Fran Muncey, and all these people are just in awe of that Fran Muncey's in this restaurant, in this bar, and all of a sudden on the count of 3, the whole team would just flop over on their backs, Fran included, with their arms and legs up in the air.
But then you get up, it's so fast that they think, did I see what I thought I saw?
But it was just great seeing people just amazed at watching Fran Muncey, slither around on the dance floor on her back.
I wasn't slithering. I got up as fast as I could.
When Miller came in was a really fortunate thing for us because, number one, we needed a sponsor. And number 2, they were wonderful. I mean, they weren't the Atlas family anymore. I mean, the original family broke up, but as far as a corporate sponsor went, they were wonderful.
But O.H. Frisbee went to Milwaukee and talked to them and recommended that they sponsor the team. He felt so badly that Atlas, well, there had been a
Hostile
takeover.
This is a good story. We were at the last national convention. Alice Van Lines is set up of agents all over the country who are independent business people, and then they're brought together through Alice Van Lines, which is kind of the booking agent. Well, William Simon, who was at one time the Secretary of the Treasury, had retired and it became a corporate raider. And Alice Van Lines was a perfect target because they had millions of dollars in cash, no debt. They went public. And William Simon took a run at them and eventually got them. Warren Buffett almost stopped it as a white knight, but he didn't do it. But we're at the convention, and William Simon now is taking over the company, and I'm 20. I'm a kid, really young, and I'm putting my tux on, and I'm supposed to give a goodbye speech for the race team. And there's a knock on the door about 20 minutes before the convention, the big dinner. And there's William Simon standing at my door with a couple lieutenants of his. And they walk into my room, and I'm 23 years old going, what the hell is this all about? And he said OH was in the hotel, but he would not, he was just destroyed OH. It was just horrible for him to lose this company. He started this company out of a wagon, delivering ice in the summer and coal in the winter. So they came to me, and William Simon sitting on my bed in the hotel room, and he said, you've got to go to OH and tell him he needs to come to this dinner, and he needs to stand up at the podium and tell the agents that this is a good thing and that and give his blessing. So I said, okay. So I go marching upstairs, and William Simon stayed in my room, and I knocked on OH's door, and he was in his boxer shorts. And I said, you coming to the convention? He said, no way. And I said, well, William Simon's in my room and asked me to come up here to tell you that you need to come to the podium and give your blessing. And OH said, is he in your room right now? And I said, yep. And again, I'm 23 years old. This is all big stuff to me. He says, will you go back and tell him to go fuck himself? And I said, are you sure? He goes, yep. So I marched downstairs, and I walk in the room, and William Simon and his lieutenant stand up in anticipation. I said, well, he says, go fuck yourself. And he did not come to the convention, wouldn't speak. And the happy ending to that story is the company was taken over, which was just devastating. They took OH's name off the side of the building, and there was a bust of OH when you walked in, a bust of OH, and a model of the hydroplane right next to the bust. And first thing that happened is they pulled his name off the side of the building. They took the bust and the boat and put him in a warehouse somewhere. And those agents loved OH. I mean, loved him like a father. He was what capitalism is supposed to be about. He was never about greed. He was about building his business so families could earn a living and grow and do a better job. Well, the agents, after William Simon had basically stripped the company of the cash and everything he wanted, the agents went to the bank and borrowed money, bought the company back as a group, and we all went back to Evansville, and they put OH's name back up on the side of the building, put the bus back in the lobby, and the boat in there, and that was a great day.
But couldn't get them to come back as a sponsor, I think.
They, at that point, when the company was taken over, and now that I know a little bit more about business, it was a perfect target. He just left himself, because when there's a company with a ton of cash and no debt, it's very easy to take over. When the agents got the company back, it was so, they had to go to a bank and basically leverage the heck out of everything to get the company back, so there was no way. But through all the years that I raised for Miller and Circus and even Budweiser, when we came to Evansville, they cleared out the shop, and we always used the Alice Van Line shop. And again, we're always treated, Ruth Langford, we all went to Hawaii together. Mm-hmm. This is long after the Alice Van Line sponsorship ended. We still all went to Hawaii together, and it was a great group, close group. When we left Alice Van Lines, we went to Miller, and Miller were wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Different than Alice Van Lines, because the chairman of the board wasn't the guy who founded the company. It wasn't quite his family, but they so loved the boat, don't you think? I mean, where I've driven for another brewery, which I didn't care for so much, but Miller, they loved the boat, and when we won, they were so appreciative. And I mean, here, it's been Budweiser's sport for a long time. Here, Miller walks in the very first year, wins a Gold Cup, wins a national championship, basically slaps them around for a year. And Miller loved it. We loved doing it for Miller. And they were great. And still, to this day, we stay in touch with, the Miller people.
And Bernie Little said to me, Fran, the best thing you ever did for me was to get Miller as a sponsor, because now Augie Busch and Budweiser give me an unlimited sponsorship. I just felt I had that responsibility since we had a sponsor, to try to represent them well.
Fran's probably the most selfless. Her motivation is, more than any other person, is less about herself. She felt responsible to the team. She felt responsible to me. She felt responsible to the sponsor, to the fan, to just the guy who bought a ticket. Fran wanted to. It was important to her that he had a good time. I mean, she felt it was her personal responsibility to make sure that the fans on the beach had a good time. And to this day, I mean, she still operates from that kind of selfless mode. Fran was never winning boat races for Fran. That was the other thing about kicking all these tough guys' butts, the Heronsbergers and the Woomers and the Bernies, is they were there for themselves. They were there to win races and beat their chest and show the world what tough guys they were. That was never Fran's motivation. It was never about Fran winning. It was about Bill. It was about me. It was about the crew. Everybody but Fran.
The sponsor.
And the sponsor. And I think that's, more than any other one thing, I think that's what motivated the team, is that everybody knew you wanted to work for Fran because she wasn't asking for her. The way, Fran cared about everybody on her team, and, which made you want to drive harder for her. And I remember in Syracuse one time, I was very intense, and especially before a final heat. I was in the motorhome getting myself mentally prepared to race, and Fran walked in, and she said, "I have a great idea. Let's not win." And I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "Well, we've won enough. We have to take way too many risks to win. So let's let them win, and we'll just go have a big party tonight anyway." And I said, "Fran, can't do that. I mean, we've got to try and win." And she just thought, why? And I'd never run across that. But, I mean, what it showed is that, you weren't just a piece of meat to Fran. I mean, she cared, whether it was a crew member or the driver. Or maybe she was really smart and knew that would actually make you drive harder. I don't know. Maybe.
No, it was too dangerous, I think, probably. Or I thought it was.
Negotiations were always difficult with Fran because we'd go into the office at the end of the year and she'd say, "Well, how much do you want? And I'll give it to you." And I said, "No, Fran, you're supposed to say, I'm going to give you this much and not a penny more." And she goes, "No, you tell me how much you want and then I'll give you that." And I said, "No, you're supposed to say." So we get into this reverse negotiation. She'd say, "Well, I'll pay you this." I'm going, "Well, that's too much." And we'd argue, but it was the opposite direction.
The difference, I think, between Bill Muncey and Chip Hanauer as far as drivers is Bill was a showman, and he was trying to get attention to the sport, and he liked to win the finals, but it wasn't, well, sometimes it was important. Other times he could care less. If it wasn't a big race, Gold Cup always he wanted to win, and Seattle he wanted to win. And then when he moved to San Diego, he wanted to win there, but the others didn't really mean that much. But when I took over the team and Chip was the driver, I'd never seen such intensity where every single heat he wanted to win it. I just marveled at that. So because he was always trying so hard and everything always meant so much to him, every single win, that I think that's what always makes the team and myself, well, you're always trying to reach perfection, which of course you never can with mechanical objects, but that's what I think kept us trying so hard, because he tried so hard. I mean, just put every ounce of himself into focusing and concentrating. So it was okay that he didn't want to talk, because, I mean, we all knew that was just Chip. But and he never ever made a driver error in those 7 years. He never, not one. There were plenty of mechanical errors, but and as I had said, also Bill made error, and he was mistakes, and he was the first to say that was my fault. But with Chip, I mean, it's just amazing. So people have asked me before, who is the greatest driver in unlimited hydroplane racing, and I would have to say that it's Chip Hanauer, because every single heat, everything has to be perfect. He tries his hardest. He wants to win it. He does everything he can to win it. And with Bill, he was a great spokesman for the sport, a great boat racer, and and he brought so many new fans to it, and he became bigger than the sport. His name did, because he was associated with it for so long, and especially through the eras where boat racing was one of the number one sport in Seattle anyway. So to me, that's the difference.
I remember we lost it because of an engine failure in San Diego. And
Who were you driving for? Circus.
see, I don't remember.
Well, I mean, because I was in there,
Right.
well, 7 years, and so we won 7 years in a row.
But it was a mechanical failure, and I remember the boat coasting to a stop, and it was fine. You know, it was like, I was so prepared for it to end 5 years earlier. It was almost like, phew, good. Thing finally came to an end, and got back, and Mark Smith, who's gone on to become the Budweiser crew chief, was the engine guy at that time, and he was so despondent. I mean, he felt like, and I understand probably what he felt, but he didn't understand that. It wasn't no big deal to me, but here's this kid, and at that time he was probably 22 or 23 years old, and he was in tears. He was sobbing. He felt that he had let, this streak come to an end, and no matter how hard I tried to convince him that it didn't matter, I always felt horrible that he felt so responsible for that. It would have been better if the streak would have ended with me jumping the gun or something, so that somebody else didn't feel like they had ended something that was that important. Jim Cropfield was my favorite driver. I mean, he was so talented, and I think he had a lot of intensity. He's the only guy I think I ever came up against that I felt was as intent on beating me as I wasn't beating him. And I was a Jim Cropfield fan before. I was much more aware of Jim Cropfield than he was of me, because he was older than I was, and I had watched him drive Limiteds and was just in awe of him, and was afraid when he came to Limiteds. I thought, this guy is going to be the first guy in all my life where I've met my match. I don't think I can handle this guy. But in San Diego, he'd been doing this thing all year, and I've been letting him get away with it, where he would come from the infield right at the entrance pin to the turn before the start and just slide in there and move me over. So at the driver's meeting, I said, the rule book says a guy on the racetrack has a right of way. And I said, is that true? And the referee, whoever it was at the time, said, yeah. And I said, well, if I'm coming at somebody, I'm not backing off. And Cropfield was sitting in front of me, and he leaned over to, it must have been his crew chief at the time, and he goes, that was aimed at me. He goes, something, don't worry about it or something. Well, sure enough, the final heat, it all shapes up. Here comes Jim trying to sneak around the entrance pin to the turn, and I just decided I'm going to T-bone him or I'm going to get it, but no more. And it was close. It was real close, but I think we got it.
Right, and so he went up over your
Right.
rooster tail, and Bernie started in the pits. Bernie started climbing up the ladder to call Lee Shanoff over on the other. I said, Bernie, you get down from that ladder. Don't you dare call Lee.
But Jim was
That's the rules.
extremely intense. Another one he did to me, which he got me on, is he in those days you could mill anywhere, and he picked me off of a patrol boat. We went by a big yacht, and remember it had a swim step on the back, and he stayed just enough in front of me, and then he hung a left, and I was forced to put the boat between him and there was a photographer, and I remember seeing the photographer jump off the boat, and I remember the skid fin, trying to get the boat up on its side to get the skid fin over the guy's swim step, and I wasn't sure if I had gotten it over. I assumed I'd cut the thing off, so Jim and I had some really, really intense battles, but the thing that was great about Jim is we were such good friends. I mean, the minute it was over, and we always went and drank beer together. We always had fun together, and Jim never had any if I beat Jim, he never resented it. And if I got beat by Jim, I didn't resent it. I felt like I got beaten by a really good, honest, straightforward guy. So, and I feel a lot of guilt because a lot of the Gold Cups, to win 7 Gold Cups, there has to be a lot of luck involved. That wasn't all skill. I mean, there's definitely a lot of luck. And the second one was very lucky. And Jim should have won it. He was out in front with 1 lap to go, and the engine failed. And at the time, it didn't bother me. At the time, I loved it. But now it really bothers me because I assumed at that time that Jim was going to win a lot of Gold Cups. And the fact that he went to his grave never having won one, it's always bothered me that he should have had that one. It would have been much better for him to have that one than for the streak to go on to 7. And if I could give him one of the 11, I would have gladly done it because there's so many names probably on that trophy that maybe aren't that deserving. And Jim Crawfield's name is so deserving, and not being on there is a tragedy, I think.
Mm-hmm.
We were in San Diego, and we had blown a hot end and cut the boat in half. And I jumped in the water because it was a saltwater race. And if the thing went down in saltwater, the honeycomb would have been contaminated and the boat would have been junk. So I jumped in the water, which stopped the heat. And Jim Crawfield was just livid. And when I got back, we immediately loaded up the boat and headed for Seattle, me included. We were all in the bus and truck. We had to get the thing home to get it fixed for San Diego, I guess. And we had driven all night, and we'd gotten up to, I don't know where we were, somewhere in Oregon, and I went and called my machine. And somebody had said, they had read the Seattle PI that Jim Crawfield had referred to me as a low-life scum. So
Yes.
I remember walking into the bus, and I think, well, that's kind of a rude thing to say. And I walked in the bus, and there's everybody sitting in the bus, the whole crew, and I said, geez, Jim Crawfield referred to me as a low-life scum. And one of the crew guys said, well, you could sue him for that. And Fran said, yeah, but then wouldn't you be forced to prove that you weren't a low-life scum?
That was a joke.
That was true, though. I remember the story.
Then another time you jumped off the boat was in Houston.
Right. I think that's why I was mad about San Diego.
Yeah, we heard about that one.
And so the worst repercussion the team felt was we went to the winter meetings in Miami, and Chip wasn't invited to Bernie's party, so none of us went.
What had happened in Syracuse is it came down, it must have been the last race of the year because it came down to the national championship. Oh, it was Houston, I'm sorry.
Mhm,
Yeah,
Houston.
Houston, not Syracuse. And we had an engine failure. And the only thing to me, it was like playing basketball. When I played basketball, it's 1 second on the clock and you don't have the ball, you foul the guy. And the only thing I think to do is I got to stop this. Somehow I got to stop this. Not really thinking how it could all end up good, but I knew I had to at least stop it for now. So I jumped in. So then they had to rerun the heat. And all of a sudden, when I could hear him go by and he had engine problems, I thought, oh my God, we're going to win this thing because he's not going to finish. And then I felt kind of bad, but
Not too bad.
not too bad. But it was one of those things in basketball, for example, where you foul a guy with no time left on the clock, and somehow the guy stumbles and you get the ball and put it in, and it worked. The other thing that was good about that, at the next year at the annual meeting, they changed the rule that wouldn't stop the heat, and if it did, they were going to fine you. And I thought, perfect, because now somebody can't do it to me. So it all worked out great.
Yeah, I said to Chip, how did you think about doing that? Because the last time I'd seen it was in 1972 in Washington, D.C., when Billy Sterrett was driving. For some reason, he was driving the Budweiser, I think it was him, and Bernie was out there screaming, jump in the water, jump in the water. So that was the last time I'd seen it. One thing about it that it was always so important for me to win. I wanted the team to win. And when Bernie was getting unlimited dollars from Budweiser, and Miller really couldn't justify paying any more money, not much more. We had a 2-year contract. There was 1 year left. there wasn't much more that we could do. Budweiser just had so much more money. So I thought, Bill Bennett has more money than Anheuser-Busch and Bernie Little and Augie Busch, all of them put together. And so it would really be better for the team to get him, either, as it turned out, I leased it to him for a year and then sold everything to him. But that it was the right move, except that I thought he would stay with it. I had no idea that he would win and then sell. That was too bad.
Within 12 hours.
Yes. Well, it was 2 years, though, right? 2 years and 2 hours.
Was that the in Vegas?
Yeah, we had another great party. We won the national championship, which Bennett had wanted for 15 years, however long he'd been at it. And we got back to the hotel, and there was this huge suite and a grand piano and food everywhere and alcohol. And we had this great party that went on until real late. And I got a phone call in the morning from Bill Bennett's secretary, and he said, or she said, you need to come up and see Mr. Bennett. And he said, I'm done. I was like, geez, that was quick. So everybody was pretty disappointed.
They were so happy with Chip because he was a spokesman for in their marketing department. I made my decision because the team needed to win, and it couldn't because I didn't have a lot of dollars personally that I could pump into the team, and it needed money for new technology and just to
Yeah, at the time we were
be competitive.
We were running 2 boats for 2 separate sponsors, and
Yeah,
it was futile. It wasn't going to work, so we had to go one way or the other. And I think she chose Bennett because it looked like more of a sure thing because it wasn't a corporate deal. It was Bill Bennett who was the corporation. So we felt that, or I think you felt that the future was better
with Bill Bennett, because he had all those resources.
Right.
Now Miller called me and said, we want to sponsor it too, and I said, well, all I can do, I'll tell Bill Bennett that, and because they wanted to be associated with Chip, but I guess Bill Bennett didn't. I don't know why he didn't want Miller to be a part of it. He didn't need
money,
it.
So.
But you'd think that he'd still want them, if they were interested, to let them associate themselves. But he wasn't interested. I was happy for him, even though Bernie was. You see, Bernie, we really liked each other, and I know Chip likes and respects Bernie, and so do I. And I think he feels the same way. It's just that he was so much fun to beat because he would be so upset. He was really a bad loser. His bus would do he would smoke out of those pits so fast.
They interviewed him on the dock, and he immediately went to the bus, and I saw the backup lights come on the bus, and I screamed to the director, show the bus, because it wasn't 5 minutes. But then and to get out of the pits in Seattle, you got to move everybody, and it was pretty bad.
So it's the time to see a bus do a wheelie.
No, people ask about the 11 Gold Cups a lot, and they weren't all the same. And I always make the analogy of a kiss. Your first kiss is this amazing experience, and it's not to say that the rest of the kisses that happened in your life aren't good. They are, but your first kiss is one that you remember forever. And I think that's the way that Gold Cup was. No other Gold Cup had the same meaning, had the same impact, had the same intensity, had the same surprise, I think. It was a real unique deal. And for my career, I was really lucky because the 2 Gold Cups that really mean the most to me were the first one and the last one. And for me, they were perfect bookends. That last Gold Cup with Pico, although not what 82 was, it came closer than any other race. That one felt really good. So it felt like a good way to start the thing and a good way to end the whole thing. that comes up a lot, the why not keep racing and try to get the record. And I think there's a misconception that I stopped because I didn't want to beat Bill's record, and that's not true. It just, like everything, it feels like in the career, it just worked out perfect. I wouldn't have stopped just to avoid breaking Bill's record, but it worked out perfectly. That it was nice to be able to stop at that time. It was just one more factor that said, this is great timing. I mean, you can win all the races, but just be one short and leave that alone. It was just one more factor. It wasn't, that was the reason, it was just a nice factor. And the thing that has worried me after making that decision is basically the sport, to one degree or the other, has collapsed. And there was one boat that virtually could win every heat, every lap, every championship. And I thought, Bill's record is just going to get squashed in a very short period of time, and it's going to be so wrong, because the way, the fashion it's going to be broken is not the fashion that it was set. But yet it would skew to the outside world that, well, gee, this other guy won all these races, but it is people who know the sport, that wouldn't have been the case. And I thought that's going to be a bad way for Bill's record to go down. So I'm really grateful that that was avoided. And records never meant that much to me anyway. I mean, they were, I don't even remember my bloody career. So, it's not that I sit and think about them. So it just, there's no meaning there. I mean, if I had won one more race or two more races, it wouldn't change my life at all. But I think the fact of Bill keeping that record is a good thing. It's better. It better belongs with him than it does with me. He has more use for it. The sport has more use for it being there than it does with me. So it just worked out great.
Something I'm proud of Bill. Maybe I had a little to do with it, just because I was so proud of him and just so excited about all the racing, is that he won 40 races in the 12 years that we were married. And all those other years, it was 22. So.
And that's the other thing I think that people don't know about Fran and Bill, is that Bill was not a business person. Fran has proven time and time again that she's a very good business person. It's my understanding that Bill, basically Fran gave Bill an allowance. He had the cash in his pocket. That was my experience with Bill. I mean, when we traveled racing outboards, Fran gave him cash. And when they bought the team, bought it from Shaneth, I guess, or from Heronsberger. I wasn't there, obviously, but I have to believe that was all Fran that figured that out and pulled that off.
Not really. That was OH.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh. And Atlas Van Lines loaned the money, and then we made payments. It was only $250,000 for all that equipment. Isn't that amazing?
But I think the business end of the sport when they were running was Fran, was not Bill. She was the one making that work. Bill made the boat work, I think, and obviously drove brilliantly. But Fran, quietly, I think, was making that team solvent. I don't think most people know. And that's the other thing that somebody tried to, when they bought the team, she was listed as the owner. And then there was somebody was keeping records of who, most winning owner, and they discounted those wins that was really Bill, and that really pissed me off because it wasn't really Bill. I mean, Fran was playing the owner's role in that team. So the wins that are listed with Bill as her being, those are legitimate, absolutely legitimate wins, no question.
"30 years ago, Bill was saying what a great idea Bill France had, and taking it out of the owner's hands and then deciding, not exactly deciding who was going to win, but like if someone was too far out in front, to put a yellow flag out so they all were running even again, and changing rules when he needed to put on a good show. He really admired that, and it was futile. He was really always trying to do that, but there was no way that, and so Bernie Little was always trying to control the sport, and it seemed like that Bill Muncey was always trying to keep it intact, to grow it. And but I'll have to say it took Bernie 20 years to finally
Break it, back, I think.
destroy it or whatever. He was the sport's best friend and also its worst enemy.
I feel bad for the drivers. You know, it's they've taken the driver out of it right now. Even though academically or intellectually I understand it has to be, because they got the sport so in such bad shape that they had to come in and put the controls on it. But I would have left the sport if this was happening back in when we were racing together. I wouldn't have stayed. I mean, it's not what I want racing to be. I think this could have been avoided years ago by making some right decisions that were never made. And to me, I saw this coming 20 years ago. I mean, I just couldn't make people understand it. And now it's come to this. I admire Gary Garbeck for doing it. I support him in doing it, but I'm glad I'm not driving now. And the other thing is, I think, it's like everything in life. I mean, the times that we shared together that I treasure probably more than any other group of years in my life. But it's over, and I think it's a real mistake to, whether it be boat racing or anything, to go back and try and find that again. It was this wonderful time. It started, it had a middle, and it came to an end. And I think, Fran is on to being a very successful businesswoman, and I enjoy being a bum, and I can't see that ever happening again. I can tell. I'd rather
Okay.
answer that because I don't think she'll be
Okay.
honest.
I will be honest.
Fran managed the team better than any of these yahoos and tough guys are now. I mean, it just kills me. Fran's belief was, I'll do anything to make this team go better. If you'd have said that she had to stay home, if she thought by her staying home would make the team win, she'd do it. So she was always looking to find the best people she could find, the best propeller guy, the best engine guy. Personality didn't matter. She wanted the best people, and she understood, like most good managers, that you find the best people in their job, and then you get out of their way and support them, and things will work. The owners today just don't seem to get it. And it's funny, I've had owners call me looking for input. You give them input, and they tell you why that's all wrong. And I've seen so many owners come into this sport, spend millions of dollars, and then leave in a huff, but not one of them has ever called and said, can I take you to lunch? Can you tell me who's good? They hire people that have never won races, that have no track record of success. They've never been to the mountaintop. It's funny how many great businessmen come into racing and fail horribly. We won, and we were financially secure because Fran was a great manager. Just that, and I think she comes by it naturally. I don't think she has a business degree or reads a lot of business books, but she just knows how to manage.
Well, and you knew, or you know who's good, and a team that what you did for Fred Leland by insisting on having the right.
Making them bankrupt.
Well, no, right people. You were able to beat the Budweiser, and they had that technology they'd been developing for 30-some years. You guys just kind of started brand new, and you had all this group of people, and look what you did.
Yeah, the owners that are, ultimately you have to take responsibility for your success or your failure. And the owners that did not achieve what Fran achieved have to take responsibility for it. They did not manage their teams well. Fran managed her teams very well and sold the team. I mean, most of these guys, when they're done racing, they've got a garage full of stuff that it's hard to mark. Fran came in, kicked everybody's butt, had good sponsorships, brought national companies in, sold the thing, probably
and we were the good guys.
for a profit, and it was gone on to be a very successful businesswoman. It's management. She's the common denominator.
I know in San Diego, it has become a happening, an event, and people don't, the public doesn't realize that it's not real racing, that it's just show business now. And so maybe for now, we can just even improve that, improve the show.
I think what's got to happen is, this is a painful time. This is trying to cure the patient. But I think maybe like Afghanistan, I think they need to be thinking, what we're doing now is not the solution. It's a means to an end. And I'm hoping, I talked to Gary a lot about this, is that he needs to put his vision out there of what he wants the sport to be someday now, even though it's maybe 2 or 3 years down the road, to get us through this period, which I think is painful for the drivers. It's painful for anybody who understands the sport and really loves the sport for more than just boats going around in a circle. For those people, it's fine. But I think Gary needs to do what he's doing now. I understand why he needs to do it, but he needs to make public his vision for what he wants it to come back to, which I hope is true racing again, but with a structure that allows everybody or more people to be competitive. But so far he hasn't done that. All we've gotten is this kind of show right now. And I know that worries people who love the sport.
What do you think the power source would be? Automotive?
It doesn't. Yeah, I think the power source needs to be automotive. It needs to make a lot of noise. I don't think it really matters what it is, as long as it's. My formula is that everybody runs the same motor from the same supplier. That you can claim motors. Everybody gets propellers from the same supplier. Everybody gets gearboxes from the same supplier. Then it becomes the driver and the ability to take the same components and set them up. An IndyCar program right now, I mean, there's 2 or 3 chassis and there's 2 motors, but certain teams win a lot because they take those same components and make magic with them, and other teams can't. And I think that's where the sport has to go. If you leave it wide open like this, where somebody can come in with a technology and just destroy it, it's never going to get anywhere. I think the reason we keep running this equipment is these guys have made this investment in this stuff that now there's no market for it. It's used up, it's old, it's falling apart, but they have nothing else. And I think Gary needs to say, look, you can run this stuff for another season or 2 seasons, but show them where it's going so they don't keep spending money, because what happens is they keep spending money on the same stuff, so then it makes it hard for them to let go of it because they keep investing in it. Show them where the end of this equipment is so they can stop investing in it now, use up what they've got, and then start with something new. But he's got to put that out there. He's got to show people what the future can be.
Don't you think Bernie has an influence on that too, because he has all that equipment?
Yeah.
He doesn't want to start over?
Yeah, but actually...
In fact, he told you that.
Actually, well, yeah. But actually, it's even worse for Bernie, because if that equipment became valueless right now, Bernie's life isn't going to change. But Jim Harvey, Bill Wooster, if this stuff all of a sudden becomes absolutely worthless, it's almost worthless now, but if it became absolutely worthless, it would devastate him.